Hello and welcome to Premodern Red-Green Threshold. But before we get into the video, if you do like these, please do like, comment and subscribe. It really helps out the channel and I really appreciate your support. So this deck works on the threshold mechanic, which means if we have 7 or more cards in our graveyard, our cards with threshold will get some kind of buff. In this case, it buffs our creatures to make them bigger, and a 1 mana 3/3 Shroud or a 2 mana 4/4 really are extremely efficient. We're also playing Terravore, as this goes along with filling our graveyard up and some of the other cards that we're going to have a look at in a second. This card is also massive. So we use land destruction not only to slow our opponents down, but also to fill our graveyard. Things like Wasteland and Raise put cards in our graveyard as well, and we're also playing 2 copies of Devastating Dreams, which has an additional cost to cast of discarding cards at random, which is actually quite brutal, but the effect is just absolutely game-ending. It causes each player to sacrifice that many lands and deals that much damage to each creature, meaning you can just wipe an opponent's board completely out, leaving you with whatever it is that you have in play and just taking over the game. We also have Mox Diamond, which really speeds up our game plan, as well as putting lands in the graveyard for those cards that need that. And we're also playing Mulch, which is a really good card advantage in this deck because we are playing a lot of special lands. We have the cycling lands, which can help us go through our deck, but also act as an instant speed way to put an extra land in our graveyard, and opponents can't actually react to the discard part of the cycling. We're also playing Sylvan Library, which works really well with cards that can shuffle or take cards off the top of our deck. It's been errated. Essentially it works as in your draw step you draw 3, you can put 2 of them back in any order, or you can choose to keep either of those cards at 4 life each. We're also playing Lightning Bolt for interaction, nothing much to say about that, as well as some kind of artifact or enchantment destruction. For lands, we have a whole lot of special lands. We've talked about most of these, but we're also playing Treetop Village. It's just a really strong man land that can just get the game done. We are playing all the other regular red-green lands you'd expect, and unfortunately Mox Diamond, which is very expensive money-wise. For the sideboard, you'll definitely expect to see some form of sweepers such as Pyroclasm, some kind of anti-graveyard cards, and more artifact and enchantment disruption, as well as some of those red blasts for against blue decks. The ideal starting hands have some form of acceleration with Mox Diamond into either Mulch or Mana Disruption. Ideally the Mulch can help us to draw into more of those Wastelands and Rishadan ports. When playing it, ideally we just want to build our graveyard up while disrupting our opponent's mana. Mulch can really go such a long way in this deck. It's just a great card, either drawing us more cards or filling the graveyard and making our other cards better. And so the general strategy is just to disrupt our opponent's mana while our efficient creatures can just get the job done. They will actually get threshold very quickly, and sometimes Devastating Dreams can just absolutely destroy everything and take over the game. Anything that cheats on mana is great against this deck, especially if it comes down quick and fast. Also, anything that gets around Rishadan port, such as instant speed removal or things that can get around Shroud. Pernicious Deed is especially strong as it takes out those Shroud creatures and the Mox Diamonds, and things like Exalted Angel or late game threats will usually take over the game if you can get them into play. We're definitely a mid-range deck here. Against aggro decks, we're trying to slow them down long enough for our creatures to gain threshold and start to take over the game. And against control, we're looking to disrupt their mana long enough for our creatures to get big and just beat them down quickly. The strengths of this deck would be it has threats and disruption. It's also very good against the slower decks and attacks from a different angle. It also has card advantage, which is quite nice for a green deck, and it does have good mana with all of the mulches. The downsides are it's very expensive money-wise, and fast and free stuff can really be a beating. So here's an example list. This one might not be on TC decks yet, but I do recommend checking anyway, as by the time you watch this video it might be up there. Here's an example of a list that I played, and this one is becoming more popular over time. So thank you for watching and see you next time.